Welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Evans. I am with PCC, or Portland Community College's Institute for Health Professionals, and I am delighted that you all are with us this evening to learn more about the Foundations of Clinical Research certificate program that we offer. I am really honored to be here this evening with two of our instructors, Rachel Sauter and Yash Kanjechi. I'm so sorry, Yash, did I say that right? Okay, we'll let you both introduce yourselves with the right um, pronunciations in a little bit here. And yeah, really delighted to have you with us. I am the coordinator for this and many of the certificate programs within the Institute for Health Professionals. I have a master's in communications and a bachelor's in health science. I've been a massage therapist and worked in integrated healthcare, worked in cardiac rehab, and have done an awful lot of work with nonprofits and workforce development in different management and grant oversight roles. So I bring a unique blend of interests and passions to my job, and it has allowed me to really support so many people in entering and expanding their knowledge in the career of their choice. With me this evening are two people that have spent much of their career in clinical research, so I will invite them to introduce themselves to you. Rachel, would you like to go first? Oh, and I try unmuting yourself now.
Yeah.
There we go.
Great.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Sauter, and as Amy mentioned, I am one of the instructors from past courses. I have my master's in public health, and I'm a SOCRA certified research professional. I have been working in oncology research for over 26 years. So I've literally spent my whole career working in clinical research throughout different institutions, but all mostly focused on patient data. And I have had the opportunity to teach in this program since the beginning. And I will have to say this is a really unique program. There's really not much like this anywhere for people that aren't working on advanced degrees. So I'm really excited to be part of this program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. We're really honored that you've been part of this program since its inception and have continued to contribute to it in so many ways. Yash, we would love to hear from you.
Hi, my name is Yash Khajanchi, and I come to clinical research from a very different background. I used to be a physician in my own country until 1999. And then I started as an independent researcher in minimally invasive surgery at Legacy Health and worked there for 9 years. And then I decided to come to clinical research about 15 years ago when I joined Providence. And I have a master's degree in clinical research. And I have been working in mostly hematology for last almost 10 years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yash. We are really thrilled that you are with us this evening as well. Got a few ground rules to get us started this evening. First of all, this session is being recorded. We'd love to see your face if you're comfortable with that, especially during the Q&A, but that is optional. We know it might be not the most convenient time for everyone there, but it's so nice for everyone to get to know the audience and talk with you and get to meet you a little bit that way too. We do ask that you keep your microphones muted throughout the entire session unless you are called upon, or during the Q&A time we will open things up there. But in the meantime, we would love to capture any questions that you have, so please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. If there's something that we can respond to in the chat, we will do that. Otherwise, we will hold the chat as kind of a parking lot, and we'll review that at the end to make sure that any questions that are asked there get answered. So with that, we are going to dive in a little bit more to our topic at hand. The clinical research program is one of several programs at the Institute for Health Professionals. We provide a lot of certificate trainings and career support, either for entry level or professional development for people interested in the health profession. I oversee a variety of integrated healthcare programs, including functional nutrition, herbalism, and Ayurveda yoga. I also have a lot of mental and behavioral healthcare programs that I have created and coordinate. And then the clinical research program is in my portfolio. Our department also has a lot of American Heart Association classes. We offer dental assisting and a variety of entry-level programs, including phlebotomy, medical assisting, and many other trainings. All of these programs are housed on the non-credit side of PCC, which gives us a lot more flexibility and allows us to make our pricing consistent regardless of where a student is located. So we've had international students, students in other states, as well as folks down the street from where we're located, all that get to take advantage of our programs for the same price and have that same instructor led experience there. As part of PCC, we are accredited and we are able to provide all of our students with access to a lot of the PCC resources. So there's our phenomenal library with trained librarians that are there to help you. We have a lot of resource centers. We have disability services and a lot of other student support roles. And then we have our career services center that we'll talk about later on. Most of these services do have some remote capacity to them. So if they would be helpful to you, I'm really delighted to be associated with a college that is so resourceful and committed to serving its students. Now we're going to let Rachel share a little bit about why someone would want to enter clinical research. So many exciting things in the field.
Well, obviously, we are all here because we love clinical research, and it's a field that you might not have even known about. But think about every medication that you've ever taken, all the prescriptions, they were in a research study at some point before they landed on your shelves and in your medicine cabinets. This field is continually growing. There's so many places you could do research, behavioral health. We have obviously oncology. We have different aspects of medical devices, anything you can think of, there's probably a clinical trial for it. So this is a huge field and many opportunities to try different types of research. Obviously, there's many roles. Starting at the very top, we have pharmaceutical companies who come up along with physicians with these unique studies, nurses that see the patients, the doctors that treat the patients. We have lab people who just collect lab samples and spin them and process them. We have data coordinators who work with all the medical information that's received from the patient. And this is a job you can take anywhere. This is worldwide. Research happens throughout the world. So you could work remotely. You could work on a study that's maybe happening in Texas, or you could live in Texas and work for a company that's in Portland. So this is something you can take with you. And having this experience is applicable to many different applications. Even if you don't end up in clinical trials or in a specific research thing, you're going to learn a lot. Very diverse. There's so much happening in clinical research. Like we said, there's so many different areas that research is happening. This program is really unique because sometimes it's hard to get your foot in the door. How do you get experience working in clinical research without doing it? That's why this is a unique program, because you're learning all the different aspects of clinical research, and then you can apply what you've learned in a real life setting. There's internships available. There's lots of opportunities once you've had the training and experience through this program.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate that. I think we're going to talk about some of the different roles within clinical research next.
Yes. So depending on where you're at, these titles and roles may be different. So a clinical research assistant, where I'm at the Providence Cancer Center, generally is people who work with our labs. So they will collect lab samples, spin them, process them. But in some places, a clinical research assistant might actually be in a lab working with slides and microscopes and all different kinds of things. So it really depends on where you're at. But for our place, clinical research assistant is kind of an entry-level position. And in some institutions, it's doing very basic research. That rolls into a clinical research coordinator, who is somebody who has had more experience. They're going to be working directly with the nurses and doctors with the patient's data. So they're going to be going through electronic medical records and pulling out specific data in order for whoever is collecting the information. Say it's a pharmaceutical company. All the information they need, you're the one gathering it and carefully entering it into the system that they've provided. That's usually somebody who has had a couple years experience that can move into a clinical research coordinator role. Data manager, that's very similar to a clinical research coordinator. A data manager or a data coordinator, they can be very similar depending on where you're at. It could just be how they title it. A project manager is somebody that's going to oversee the whole project. That's generally on the pharmaceutical side. They're going to check on the sites, make sure they're getting all the data they need, and they're going to make sure that whoever's monitoring the study is collecting all the information. For these type of research projects, there's lots and lots of information and paperwork and documentation that's required. So a project manager is really overseeing everything to make sure that all their ducks are in a row and they're continually collecting the latest approved information. A regulatory specialist or coordinator, that's actually what I do now. I went from I was a clinical research coordinator for many years, and now I've switched to the regulatory side. So the regulatory side is the part that really protects the patients. So the doctors and nurses and coordinators are there to treat the patients, and the regulatory side is to make sure they're doing it ethically, that we're really keeping that patient safe. And so that requires lots of regulatory review boards that are reviewing every little piece of information that the patient sees and signs, and anything that has to do with taking care of that patient. A clinical research associate is also the same thing as a clinical research coordinator, depending on where you're at. But some people will use the clinical research associate title for the pharmaceutical monitors that are overseeing the study. So it really depends on where you're working and how your institution labels things. A trial sponsor monitor. So every study that we do is monitored. They check everything to make sure that we're entering correct information, that nothing has lapsed as far as certifications or training. So they're constantly checking to make sure that we are putting in the right data and that we are keeping those patients safe and following the protocol. And a clinical nurse, so these are nurses that have specialized in clinical trials. So they oversee the patients that are on clinical trials. So not only are they giving their general care to the patients, but they're making sure that everything is followed specifically according to a protocol. When patients are on clinical trials, not only do they have standard of care, but we go above and beyond, and there's extra tests, extra monitoring that happens for these patients, and the clinical trial nurses work with the physicians to make sure all that is captured. So and these are just some of the roles for research. There's many more, just depending on the institution and where you would like to work.
Thank you so much, Rachel. As you can hear, there are a wide variety of areas for folks to focus and grow in the field. Yash, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I think Rachel covered it pretty good. We can move on to the next one, I think.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you both. So, quality and characteristics of clinical research.
So clinical research is, as Rachel already said, that is a very fast-paced environment. And if you are going to work in clinical research, all the roles that Rachel described in the previous slide, no matter whichever role you take, there are certain things you should be looking for in yourself. And that is, you need to know whether you have to be very detail oriented. You need to be able to take up challenge. You need to be able to be multitasking. And the reason for all these qualities to have is because um, no matter which role you are working in, it's a very data heavy role it's going to be. And the primary role of most of the clinical researchers is either to abstract the data, interpret it, and transfer it to some other data capture environment, or in some roles, you would be reviewing that data. You need to be able to read through the protocols and understand the language in the protocols. You need to be able to read through the consent and understand what is being said in there. But one of the best things about clinical research jobs is we all might think that, oh, do I have those qualities to be working in this environment or not? But from my personal experience, what I think is a lot of it you learn when you take up a job. And there are wonderful people around you who help you grow and learn everything. And you can actually learn most of those qualities as you start working in any role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, in listening to both of you, it sounds like there can be so much time spent on those details and reports and data. Are there opportunities to work with people? Obviously, your peers, you just referenced that, but do some of the roles have a little more human interaction with subjects or
Yes, some of those do have. So, like, depending on different institutions, in some places, like in our Providence, we have the rules are very defined. Like a clinical research coordinator usually interacts with subjects only for consenting or for administrating some quality of life questionnaires and things like that only. But in some places, they are more involved with the human subjects. And in some places, they are also responsible for doing the collection of lab samples. But in our institute, we have like different personnel who would deal with the lab aspect of the clinical trials, and there are people who are only handling the data aspect of it. And then most of the subject interaction is done by the clinical trial nurses. So it varies a lot from place to place.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that falls under the ever-changing portion
Yeah.
that we find a lot. So great. Thank you so much. And let's talk about some of the different places that employ clinical researchers.
So, of course, medical institutions, all the big hospitals around here have their own research groups. So Providence, Legacy, OHSU, Kaiser, Compass, they all have their own research departments with their own research studies. And sometimes we have similar studies at the same institutions. Sometimes they're very different, but all these places around here are big research institutions. Pharmaceutical companies tend to sponsor with their deep pockets. They're able to sponsor these clinical trials. They can help pay for the drugs and to run these clinical trials because it takes a lot of money to run a clinical trial. So not only do you have to pay for the drug and some of the testing, but also you have to pay for the staff at these sites that can run these studies. So pharmaceutical companies, that's another place not only that can run studies, but these are places that research people can work. These are a great place, an opportunity for people to work. Device companies, so think about people who have pacemakers and different types of implants. All these companies are also doing research. The VA, so the VA, sometimes they have their own research department, or sometimes they'll contract with a local hospital that will, they'll run their research through. It just depends on how they've set up their research department. Private medical offices, like I mentioned, Compass Oncology, they do a lot of community-based studies as well. So clinical research organizations, or CROs, these are big companies that tend to help monitor the study's progress for the pharmaceutical company. They're kind of like the middleman. So that's another place that is an opportunity to work. The government, of course, the government funds lots of research. So you may be on the end that's working using a government grant to do research, or you could be working for the government on the research side of things. So all this research that happens has to go through what we have central or local IRBs, and an IRB is an institutional review board. And those are the boards, again, that review everything patient related to make sure that we're keeping these patients safe and doing everything correctly and according to the books and the rules for these patients. So they have central ones, which means they're big places that are usually, we send things in remotely. And what we have local IRBs, a lot of big institutions like Providence and OHSU have their own in-house, what we call local IRB boards. So these are obviously places that people work because they process lots of paperwork. So clinical research employers are everywhere, and you just may not know it yet, but soon you will learn.
Thank you so much, Rachel. With so many different places to work and different roles and opportunities, can you share with us a little bit about some of the different training and background and certifications that can support folks in the field?
Yeah, so of course, the PCC Foundations of Clinical Research, which, like I mentioned, there's really nothing like it. If you have a master's, you want to work on a master's in research, there are programs for that, but just getting your foot in the door in research, this is an amazing program. And it's really a unique opportunity to get to know a little bit about all aspects of research and getting your foot in the door on an entry level, because you may get in there and realize, yes, I want to continue on and further my education, but this is a great place to start. So like I mentioned advanced degrees. Yes, if maybe you have your bachelor's and you're wanting to try research and work on an advanced degree, that is an option, but this is a great place to start. Now, there's a couple organizations that are mentioned here, SOCRA and ACRP. What these places are organizations for clinical researchers for all therapeutic areas. So it's a unique place. These places do certification. So when you've been working in clinical research for 2 years, then you're able to take a special test and be certified. That basically says you're an expert in research, that you've studied, you've worked in the field for long enough that you can be certified. Now, it's a certification program that you have to continue your education. For SOCRA, every 3 years, you have to have 45 continuing education credits to maintain your certification. But many places like Providence require this type of certification to move up the job scale. We have lots of entry-level jobs that don't require SOCRA or ACRP certification, but the higher up you go, the longer you work. They want people who are really masters and trained in clinical trials, and this is a way to do that. SOCRA and ACRP are very, very similar. They offer just slightly different certifications. So SOCRA, their certification is a CCRP, which is a Certified Clinical Research Professional, and ACRP, which gives a CCRC, or clinical Certified Clinical Research Coordinator or Associate. So they're very similar requirements as far as how long you have to be working to get certified. They both require a test to get your first certification. And then once you maintain that, you just just recertify every 3 years with a quiz and updated CEUs, education credits. So these are ways to continue to learn about clinical research and to show that you're a professional in your field.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And you may have mentioned it and I might have missed it, but if somebody, even with a master's or somebody who finishes our certificate, can they go out and get SOCRA certified right away, or what would be their...
No. So it requires you to be working full-time in clinical research. I wrote it down so I wouldn't say it wrong. 2 years full-time as a clinical research professional, or if you've been working part-time in clinical research, you can do that as long as you have 3,500 hours. So as you can see, it's not, it's a serious requirement in order to take that SOCRA certification. So it's, you can look up the information, you can research SOCRA, and you can start seeing the requirements. But they really want somebody who has had some years of experience working in clinical research.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, there's so much to learn within the field, and that on-the-job training is what I am increasingly aware of is so valuable to employers and to being able to perform well in advance. So, as evidenced by those requirements. So thank you so much, Rachel. So I thought I'd share a little bit about the background and why you could study and would choose to study the Foundations of Clinical Research program and complete your certificate with Portland Community College. Our program was developed, we started back in 2016, and mostly through hearing needs from the community. I was meeting with a few professionals at Providence, and then also with some clinical researchers at the Knight Cancer Center at Oregon Health Sciences University. And from both areas, I was hearing that there was a need for training. They just didn't have enough qualified applicants applying. And as we just talked about, there is so much on-the-job training that is needed that they were really seeking to have applicants come with some exposure to a lot of the terms and the forms and a lot of the foundational concepts so that the employers could hire them and expedite that onboarding process and get them really trained in the tailored areas that they would be working. So based on that, I started searching and found that there really was no other entry-level program out there to support this kind of rapid onboarding to employment. So I spent about 18 months creating an advisory committee with representatives from across the country. I surveyed even more representatives across the country based on some of the feedback from the advisory committee, compiled all of that data, and we utilized that to develop the curriculum. All of this was done in conjunction with that larger advisory committee, but also with local representatives from Oregon Health Sciences University, Kaiser Permanente, Providence, and then also some feedback from Legacy Health Systems. So we wanted to make sure that we were meeting a broader need, but also very specific to our local industry partners. The result has been, originally it was a 5-month program, but we've expanded it to be a 6-month program, and it is taught by 7 expert faculty. You've met 2 of them, and all of our faculty come with this tremendous expertise and background in clinical research, but in different areas of research. The more that I have learned about the field, the more I have discovered the opportunity for specialization and places where people can really find alignment with their passion, or if they want to continue growing. There's so many nuances that can be explored. So our faculty really bring that richness to the program. From its inception, if you can imagine, pre-COVID, we really designed this program to be online. That was before we even had Zoom, but we did design it as a remote program because we knew it was such a rare opportunity and we wanted to make it accessible to anyone throughout the country. So it has been designed that way and has always been delivered remotely because we did want to make it open to students and professionals, whether people were curious about clinical research, whether people were wanting to shift to clinical research, or whether people had just been employed in clinical research and their employer wanted to offload some of that training by sending them to our program. So we've had a wide variety of folks in the program, and many of whom are enthusiastically working in the field and continuing to grow. It is a really, 6 months is a great approachable time frame, one evening a week to be able to help prepare you for a new job and field. Probably just share a little of that, but it is 6 months to complete, and we have designed this intentionally as a cohort-based program. We really wanted everyone to learn together as a group, helps you with a little networking, and I love how that model allows everyone to bring their own unique lens, their life and work experience, and their networks and contacts to the class, and many times those are shared and people are really supporting each other in learning and growing in this area. We've found and heard for a long time that there were bachelor's and master's level graduates that were having difficulty getting hired, but when they've completed this program, to be able to demonstrate some of those hands-on and really practical knowledge that we provide, then things open up for them tremendously. A lot of this is because employers are really, they're strapped for time like so many people are now, and so they are really looking for the candidates that are work ready and have more of that foundation to build upon. There was a question in the chat about somebody who's a project manager in retail and is wanting to enter the clinical research field. Would additional education be beneficial? I will let our instructors answer that more during the question and answer, but from everything that I have observed, I would say absolutely yes. There are so many language-specific terms. Every hobby, every field has its acronyms, but clinical research, it's beyond. So getting some familiarity with a lot of the terms, the processes, the forms, the history of why things are done that way really enables all of our graduates to have that full picture of clinical research and be able to make more informed decisions and be able to be a lot more supportive to their peers and become more valuable in the field and have more transferable skills there. And one other great thing about our program, with much credit due to Rachel's efforts, we are able to offer our students the opportunity to work with a real oncology protocol throughout the program, so that you are also getting some firsthand experience in one of the hardest protocols that there are. So in working with that, under the guidance of our instructors, we expect that you will be able to easily read and digest and dissect any protocols that you would find in your employment.
So I will say something about this very interesting experience I would like to share, why you should be taking this course. And so when I was doing master's in clinical research, and I was learning about clinical trials and how to write the protocols and how to write papers and all those things and a lot of statistics. But I was like never understood how a large scale clinical trial that involves multiple institutions is actually run and managed. And I was like always like thinking like I need to know that part, how it is actually in real world, all of this works. So I just walked down to our clinical trials department and asked them that, you know what, I need to learn these things. And can I just start working here a couple of days a week just to understand what goes on here? And that's how I learned. And when this course was started, I just realized that this course teaches you all of that you are actually really wanting to know what it takes to be a clinical trials professional. So it's really a wonderfully designed course that really teaches you various aspects of clinical trials and how they're all integrated together and how the entire process works. And one of the most wonderful things within this field is you work as a clinical trials professional in an institution. You can always switch jobs to other places. You can work for industry, and experience from one place is carried over to another place. So there is a lot of scope there.
Thank you so much, Yash, for sharing. That's wonderful. Appreciate that. So, all right. So a little bit more about the program, and I hear that actually what Yash shared often from graduates or from folks that I'm meeting with in the field, just the practicality that this brings and the accessibility that it provides can really make a big difference. So thank you. One of just on some of the tangible things here, through providing it on Zoom, it is an all online classroom, and that does allow us to record everything. In addition to those recordings and the Zoom sessions, there are online discussions. So you'll have a chance to do some assignments, you may have some discussion posts, and again, just be part of the classroom community, meeting with your instructors and your peers. All of our class assignments and things are housed within the same shell. So you only have to go one place for all of the classroom content. In addition to that, you'll have a PCC email address, and as we already mentioned, have open access to many of the PCC resources. This utilizing the oncology protocol and some of the forms and actual studies really gives you that invaluable firsthand experience. And that makes this really applicable for folks. Early on in the program, we cover a lot of the ethics of clinical research, and in doing so, we are able to award you with what is called your Good Clinical Practice Certificate or Training, GCP for short. Larger institutions like Providence probably have online ready access for folks to complete the certification and on a regular basis if needed. But smaller employers, or just a really valuable talking point in your interview, is to let folks know that you have already completed that. So it's less time for them to have to spend with you in onboarding, and then less cost for them in a few ways, sending you to that, and then of course the time that they would pay you for that. But it also gives you a chance to really have more understanding of the history and sensitivity to why this is so important.
Amy, can I add to that?
Please.
So the GCP training is required when you work on any clinical trials. So if an employer sees that you've already done that training, that's another foot in the door, because it's required for everyone to take this training to work in the research area. So this is a great opportunity for people to take it through this program.
Thanks, Rachel. And then we also offer a possible internship. So far, we have been able to offer that every year. That is, of course, up to the different organizations that are offering internships. Rachel has been amazing in helping coordinate that and open those doors for folks. And And I always encourage everyone to take advantage of the internship whenever possible. You also, thanks to Rachel, have the opportunity to develop your own internship. So if you know that you would like to work in a particular organization or in a particular state or city, I encourage you start networking, LinkedIn and other, your personal network to help find folks there that can open those doors. And then Rachel has always graciously been willing to share the model that she helped design and has worked so well at Providence to make that easier for an organization to say yes and see the value of an intern and set it up in a way that becomes a win-win. Often these internships become long-term job interviews, and many interns, at the very least, are getting great experience that they can utilize to apply for jobs anywhere, but often they become great candidates for the next time there is an opening at that particular organization. Rachel, do you have anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, so I obviously am an advocate for internships because that's how I got into clinical trials, is through an internship, and they ended up hiring me. But this is employers' opportunities to set you loose on their systems, so you become part of an instant job pool. So if you're able to get an internship, I would highly recommend it because they've already basically trained you to do that role. And it's a lot easier for them to move you from an internship into a full-time position or part-time research position because you're already familiar with the systems that you've done during your internship. And we've had interns through Providence that have been able to use that experience to work at other institutions as well. So if you have, I would encourage you, like Amy said, to look at the internships through PCC, but also if there's another place you're interested in working, reach out to them. Let them know you're looking to do an internship for research.
Thank you so much. Next, Rachel's going to share with you some of the kind of an overview of the program. Based on that early work that I referenced with the advisory committee, we designed the program around 3 different areas of focus.
So the first area, it's going to be broken down into many classes, and I just highlighted a few to bring up. Of course, good clinical practice. You're going to learn laws and regulations. Why do we have research? Why are they so heavily regulated? What's the history behind that? It's about protecting those patients, making sure that our research is done right. We're going to go over in section 1, study design. How are these studies designed? Who's creating these studies? What's required to be part of the study? And again, an overview of a protocol. And if you aren't familiar with a protocol, so a protocol is basically, it's a Bible for that study. It's going to tell you all of the background information that got them to that point, why they want to do the study, what they're hoping to come out of the study, and exactly how that study is going to be run from the minute a patient signs a consent form. So you're going to learn all about the protocol in that first section. In the second section of the program, you're going to learn about study team roles, all the different people we just mentioned earlier, the team roles. They all work together to make sure that the study runs smoothly. We're going to talk about regulatory submissions and the review process. So again, we're going to bring up the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, and all the information that they review and why they review it. We'll also talk about some of the essential documents that are part of a research study, like I mentioned, the protocol, but also there's a consent form, which is something that the patients sign to make sure they know everything that's involved in that study that they're going to go on. And then in the third section, the last section, that's the how to run a specific study. So that's going to talk about, if it's a drug study, it's going to talk about the drug supply management, pharmaceutical information and accountability, how they prepare and recruit participants, these research patients that are going to go on these studies. They're going to talk about monitoring, auditing, and closing a study out. So there's many parts to a research study, not just opening it, but while the study's open, and then how a study closes. And for some of you, you may not realize, but we have studies, they could be open for 10 years or longer. So it's really important that we are learning all this information, because it's not just something that's open for a really short period of time. These are studies that are open for many years. And so we want to make sure that we handle every aspect and every area of the research correctly. We'll talk about subject interactions. And as Yash mentioned, depending on the institution you're at, you could be working directly with the patients. So you want to make sure that you know how you're interacting with the patients and that you're doing everything according to what's required for the study. And again, they'll go over data management, safety, monitoring, and reporting. So you will, as Yash mentioned, you will learn everything you need to know about being part of a study and clinical trials throughout this program.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And for anyone who's reached out or joined our mailing list, I've done my best to send you a sample schedule throughout from the previous cohort, so you can have a sense of the timeline and how these different subject areas are covered and the different modules within each one. So if you didn't catch all the terms and things that Rachel mentioned, that should be in your email from some point when you reached out to us. Rachel mentioned an IRB meeting, or an institutional review board meeting, which is a really critical part of our program, quite intentionally designed. Yash, would you share with us a little bit about what an IRB meeting is, please, and why they're important? And then I'll talk about.
So, an IRB, so let me explain what is an IRB. It's called Institutional Review Board, and it's a body made of at least 5 people. And it is mandatory that one of the persons in that body is from outside the institution. Another important thing is that it is supposed to be made of a diverse group of people and has to give equal representation to both genders, and people with various backgrounds are included in this committee. There are scientists in this committee, there are statisticians in this committee, and there is definitely one community member in this committee. And what is the primary role of this committee or this board is to actually review the protocol initially before a research project, a study starts, and to make sure that the human subjects are protected. That means that no more than minimal risk is involved with the use of any investigational product. So in this research, in this IRB committee, what they do is they review that protocol and they go over what is mentioned in the protocol, and based on that, every committee member gives his or her own input to tell whether what they feel about the protection of human subjects in this committee. And one of the very important aspects of this committee is that they can actually stop any research study at any point of time they feel that it imposes more than minimal risk to the human subjects. So they are very powerful. Another thing that you see is many a times it is not possible for us to predict that how much of harm can be caused to a human subject by any investigational product. And for that reason, they not only review the protocol initially, they review it periodically. And so in every committee meeting, there would be some protocols that they are reviewing as an initial step of review. There would be some protocols that they are re-reviewing, and they are discussing what the outcomes are so far and whether the rights of human subjects are protected or not. So that is the most important role of an IRB, and that's what they do in the IRB meeting. They also review informed consent They make sure that the informed consent is written in a layman's language. There are lots of components that are mandatory by IRB to be included in the informed consent, and everything has to be written down in such a way that the person with minimum education can also understand what's written in it. So those are the key roles of IRB committee. Anything, Rachel, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add it. So it's their requirement to be written, the consent forms at a 5th grade reading level.
Yeah.
So, and I work with the IRB, so I'll get things sent back to me, and there may be a risk that they want it to be explained even simpler. So they'll say, what is the patient experience? So you may say, you'll have heartburn, but then they want it explained even more. Well, what does the heartburn feel like? So it really has to be able to be explained, like Yash said, in lay terms, very simple. So the IRB is looking at that as well to make sure it's understandable by most reading levels.
And one more thing I would like to add, they also review, in addition to the informed consent and protocol, they also review all study-related material, like all advertising material, and they would also review the investigator's brochure so that they can determine that no wrong means are used to get patients recruited for the study. So every aspect, every material that is related to protection of human subjects is reviewed by this committee.
Thank you both so much. So hopefully you're getting the idea that these institutional review board meetings are really important. They carry a lot of weight. They have a lot of independence and autonomy in making some decisions. And they also provide a really interesting opportunity for you as a student to get a little insight and some real world exposure to the conversations that are happening behind the scenes in medical research. So as part of that, we have designed our program to include having you attend at least one IRB meeting during the second term of the program. Since COVID, like so many things, many of those meetings have moved online, so they become very convenient, and they are offered at different times of the day with different frequency, depending on the institution and how many studies they are needing to review. So you'll get a lot more details about that during that second term and sharing with you, but I provide a lot of support for you, a letter and other details to either choose an IRB from one of our existing partners. Often I can open the door quite seamlessly for you to attend those. But again, there's some flexibility. So if you would like to attend one wherever you live, or you want to find an additional one that might focus on something else, you're welcome to do that. We just encourage you to focus on medically based IRBs as opposed to the academically based ones, because it will align more with the program and tend to have a little more success in getting to observe those rather than navigating university systems. So that has been something that many students have found really fascinating as part of the program there too, and the chance to really see and synthesize how some of what they've been learning, where it comes up in conversation, and understand the connections between a lot of what you're learning there. So quick overview here. In completing the program, you earn not one, but two certificates. The first is the larger certificate for the full program. That is a non-credit training certificate that is recognized and registered with the state of Oregon, but is portable, as any certificate program should be. And then you earn that GCP, or Good Clinical Practice certificate, as well. The entire program earns you about 60 CEU hours, so that if you are a professional and can utilize the CEUs, you will certainly have those to apply towards your licensure and things. For instance, an RN may have certain CE requirements to meet every year or two. 60 is often more than they need in any given year, but it's nice for people that can apply those in a few ways. And then I have a lot of bonus material that I'm always working to develop. It includes some interviews with people who work in clinical research and some people that have worked in other areas of research that parallel a lot of what you're learning and may provide opportunities for you to expand beyond that. We also have the career support through PCC that is available once you graduate. So lots of good things there. In the interest of time, I'm going to zip through a little bit of this. There is no formal application other than getting your PCC ID, which is a standard application. If you are an international student, please write me directly. Our system is still transitioning to allow international students to join non-credit programs and not automatically get routed to the International Student Department. So I have a much easier application for you. So just write me and I'll get that to you. We welcome folks from any country, any time zone, and there are no prerequisites. We do want to make sure that people are prepared to be part of a cohort-based program and really encourage you to attend the live classes whenever possible. They are recorded, as we mentioned, and we know that life happens, so it's not required, but getting to be there live, ask your questions, be part of the discussion, we find really helps students get more out of the program and succeed. The recordings are there should life happen and you need to miss a class, or if you want to review some of what was shared, because there can be a lot of information shared during those sessions. So we have them there to support your best learning style. As we mentioned, so the classes will always start at 5 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays. Their end time is variable depending on the module. So again, I mentioned that the sample schedule that many of you have received in your email, if you want to get an idea, often class is run 2 to 2.5 hours. So a common time, the most common is probably 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific, but occasionally they will run longer than that. We always give you a break, generally after every hour. You get a 10-minute break, and we try to give you the opportunity. You'll get a chance for questions and to do some of the practice work and things during a lot of the sessions as well. We've already discussed the IRB meeting that you get to choose and how we have the platform where there are all the online tools, assignments, discussions, and a lot of the materials that the instructors share with you, many of which includes the PowerPoint presentations and things that they have for you. The financial investment is incredibly reasonable. I've worked so hard to keep this as low as I can over the years, and so it's $1,249 tuition. We have no fees for this program, no book requirements, no additional expenses. So that is unheard of in any of my other programs or any of the programs that I know of. So really excited to keep this very simple and affordable for folks. I've negotiated with the college to create a special 6-month payment plan for you. So there is a standard PCC plan where you would front load more of the costs, or once you're registered, I will put you in touch. I'll give you the contact information for the single point of contact at the college who is authorized to create and enroll you in this special payment plan. The payment plan is 20% down plus a $25 processing fee for your first month, and then equal payments after that for the duration of the program. So 5 equal payments after that. And it's all interest-free, so many students opt for that. If you're an employer or you have any grants or scholarships, those can all get applied on the front end and sometimes take care of all of your tuition or at least help reduce that there. So we're happy to work with you on a lot of those things. And then as with anything online, as you probably have already, good internet access and a webcam and a mic are always helpful. So the next steps, hopefully you're ready, are to register for the program. You can complete your non-credit application. It's faster and much more streamlined than the standard application. So you go to pcc.edu/NC for non-credit to complete that application. It can take a few business days for that to get processed and for them to send your student ID back to you. Once you have that, you can either go online and register, or you can call and register over the phone. So I'll put that information in the chat. But you will be registering for CRN, or the course registration number is 43641. So that is going to be the registration number for the fall term class. Because all of the tuition is front-loaded in this program so that we can qualify you for that special payment plan, I will be able to then automatically ask to have you registered for the winter term. So in this program, you really only need to worry about signing up once, and then I can help take care of a lot on the back end. Once you have registered for the program, which I strongly encourage everyone to do by September 3rd or 4th, to give you some time to set up your payment plan. Remember, I mentioned there's one person at the college and she has many responsibilities, so I want to make sure you have time to communicate with her. You will have to communicate with her through your PCC email per FERPA regulations. So I want to give you time to set that up before the program starts. And then I'll email you a welcome letter, the detailed schedule for this coming program, and a little bit of additional information there. So make sure you take time to review that stuff and get ready. We are going to have an orientation for this program on Monday, September 23rd. And then your first class will start on Thursday, September 26th. So we'll give you some time to meet each other, learn a little bit more. I'll give you a tour of some of the technology and some of the other resources there, so that when you start your first class, you'll be able to hit the ground running with the instructors and the topics that you are excited to learn about. With that, we have time for some Q&A. So we have a lot of questions in the chat. I've addressed a couple of them. And if anyone wants to raise their hands to ask some questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Obviously, that's my contact information, which most of you probably already have access to. All right. So feel free to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question live here, and then I will also, oops, just lost my chat. Where did it go? So I'm just going to start at the top and go down, and we'll have Yash and Rachel chime in for a lot of this. We've already talked about the reasons we developed the clinical research certificate and its history there. There's a question about, why do I think other community colleges do not offer this? I don't know. Other priorities, it's a lot of work to develop it. Maybe they didn't have the same relationships, but I don't have any insights on that really, Rachel or Yash, do you?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a long time to develop the program, and you had already reached out to all the institutions. So I think they probably maybe saw that this was already happening. So
yeah. And we have a very unique department. There's really none other that I've found in the college that allows us to focus so much on professional development and short-term training support for a broader swath of health careers. Often that's embedded in part of other programs, not with dedicated staff time. So, yeah. Daniela is a project manager who's wanting to shift her career from retail marketing into clinical research. I gave my 2 cents on would it be beneficial to get some additional education, but I'd love to hear from our one or two of our instructors on that.
So I would, I mean, I am not sure, and Rachel can chime in, but so you can definitely get into clinical research if, but I do not know if you can get the first job in clinical research after doing this course as a project manager. I think for that, to be a project manager in clinical research, you will probably have to work at least a couple of years to understand the clinical trials and the job. And with that, additionally, because you are a project manager, you would definitely be benefited to get that promotion pretty quickly. That's what I feel, but I don't know, Rachel, do you agree with me or?
Yes, I agree. And I think they would want somebody who has kind of worked all aspects of clinical trials. Because when you manage the project, you have to know what every job does. So it definitely wouldn't be an entry level. But when she asked in her question about more education, I think I always recommend medical terminology, especially if she's coming from the retail field. She might not have worked in any of the medical fields. So any type of research, it's very helpful to have the basic medical terminology. So that's something I always encourage students for this program. If they haven't already taken it, it's really going to be helpful because we're always looking at patient risks and side effects. So you're going to need to know the terms that the doctors are using when you're reading these reports.
Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Great suggestions. Thank you. Jesse asks about, I'm reinterpreting it as kind of job security because so many of these studies are individually funded. Are a lot of the roles set up as contracts, or is it something where a lot of people can work part-time or full-time with a lot of continuity, and then they're just handed different studies as time goes on?
Well, I know through ours, we want to keep people long-term. We don't do any contract positions. They're either part-time or full-time. And because once you're trained in the research field, you're very valuable and we want to keep you there. So yes, the studies aren't going forever, but we have so many studies at once that there's never a lack of funding. Studies overlap. I mean, they go on for many, many years. So it may be different for a government research job. They may have a grant that only lasts a certain amount of time. But that's something obviously that is discussed when you're first looking into a position somewhere.
And the contract jobs, I think more of the contract jobs are in industry or with CROs.
That's great to know. Thank you. There was an opportunity about hearing from some of the alumni from our program. I have reached out to a few folks, but they're a little bashful from our last cohort. But we've had several that have been happy to share videos or help do interviews, and we've got some of those on our blog. So you can hear and read from some of our past graduates, more of their story, and then several have provided quotes that are also on our website there. I had a question about how people in rural areas can find roles in clinical research. My thoughts are there's a lot of remote opportunity, but can you clarify that you can live outside of a city, and how do you gain experience?
Some of the jobs definitely require you to be in the institution or close to the institution where uh, the research is taking place, because sometimes you have to be in contact with human subjects coming for the trials. But I think there are some jobs that can be managed totally remotely, and some of those jobs can be based in our institute. Like I think now our department of COVID, the regulatory position has like mostly become remote only, and they can hardly ever they have to come to the uh, office or something. but 99% of their job, they can get it done remotely. And a lot of jobs that I know in industry can be 100% done remotely, especially if you are in just data management, where you are just looking at, we call it like something where you just remotely monitor the data. That's all. So if you have access to internet, you can do those jobs from anywhere.
Great, thank you. I think our last question was more directly sent to me, so I'll read that. I'm a registered nurse who took off time to raise my children. Would this program allow me to get a job as a clinical nurse, or would it be as a clinical assistant?
Well, I think it would just really depend on the nursing experience that she had in the past. You know, it depends on what they're looking for that specific position, but I mean, I think for ours, for Providence, I think you have to have at least a BSN, but that other institutions may take just RNs. So, but definitely taking this program would help a nurse that's interested in moving into the clinical trials and the clinical research field. It definitely would be beneficial because they want to see somebody that's had some research experience.
Great.
I would second that. I think it would be definitely helpful if you have had no prior experience with clinical research. This course would definitely help you to get into a position of a research RN.
Thank you. I think we've had one graduate who did that exact thing. And then one of the other benefits, correct me if I'm wrong, but working for Providence or a lot of these larger institutions includes some tuition waivers. So whether this person, if they do not have their BSN, could they utilize once they're employed at Providence, and if they wanted to move on, is that a benefit that they?
Yes, full-time, I think only for full-time, but maybe part-time. I know Providence helps cover tuition.
That's great. So whether for nursing or if you then want to move forward and get a master's in clinical research or something else too, or
Does,
project
yeah.
management.
It does. Not all of it, but some part of it covers. They have like a cap something, so they do cover some part for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. I am going to go out and grab the link to the course itself, and then within there you should be able to have the I think the non-credit registration is in this link, and I'll paste that in the chat, and I will also paste my email address so that if anyone has any questions. Are there any other questions tonight? Feel free to raise your hand. I think we've covered everything that was in the chat, but before we sign off, I want to give everyone a chance if you wanted to ask anything live. All right. Well, thank you all for being here with us tonight, and big thanks, so much gratitude to Rachel and Yash for sharing all of their knowledge and experience with us this evening. We're really honored to have you and delighted to get to visit with everyone. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording now. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.